Hello everybody, this is Chrysantheme and welcome to Might and Magic VII. So, we pretty much wrapped up Might and Magic VI, and the only possible thing to do now is go straight to Might and Magic VII for Blood and Honor. So here we are, basically. I'm not gonna go into too much detail on, why I think this game is great to play and everything. I'm just gonna say one thing. Whatever shortcomings Might and Magic VI might have had, Might and Magic VII fixes them. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for explaining, why I love the game. Because it's pretty much the same game in essence. It's just basically polished. So, I'm not going to be bothering you with any further explanations. We're gonna go straight into party creation. And what I'm gonna do is sort of just explain all the differences, or most of the differences in this game or between this game and Might and Magic VI. And the first thing that you can see is you have different races. You have the Goblin, Human, Dwarf, and Elf race, and they all come with a different stat allocation in the beginning. As you can see, Goblins start with 14 Might, but only 7 Intellect and Personality. Humans are basically all-rounders. They start with 11 of pretty much everything except for Endurance and Luck, of which they have 9. Dwarves are, the tankier versions of the Goblins, and the Elves are perfect sorcerers because they start with a high amount of intellect and accuracy, and pretty much speed as well, although the Goblins basically trump in speed. Now, what does this mean? Well, the first thing that it means is you have an increased stat cap on the stat that starts with the higher number. Now, okay, I pretty much butchered that one. But what I mean is, if you start with 14 Might, as for example the Goblins do, and this is basically, it is tied to the race and not to the class, the stat allocation I mean. If you have 14 Might, one thing to note is that for every bonus point you spend, you will get 2 points in the stat. And also, you will increase, or you can increase the stat to a maximum of 30 as opposed to a maximum of 25, as you can see with the intellect 11 here. This is the maximum. Now, the inverse is true if you're trying to level up a stat that starts with 7. You will need 2 bonus points, as you can see it went from 28 to 26 for only 1 point increase. Well, that is the first thing to note. The second thing to note is you have some different classes now. You have the Knight, Paladin, Cleric, Druid, Archer, and Sorcerer. Those are pretty much the same they were as in Might and Magic VI, but they are also joined by the Ranger, Monk, and the Thief. And classes are... well, in essence, they aren't much different than in Might and Magic VI. However, the skills and the way skills work in this game make them very much unique in Might and Magic VII. Each class is much more unique than in Might and Magic VI. Why is that so? Well, in Might and Magic VI, if you remember, if you could learn a skill with a class, you could also master it. Now, that is not the case in Might and Magic VII. In Might and Magic VII, you have 4 different ranks of skill. You have Normal, Expert, Master, and above that is the new Grandmaster skill, which is excellent. But only certain classes can become Grandmasters, Masters, Experts in certain skills. What does that mean? Well, for example, if we highlight the sword here, you can see that the Grandmaster skill is in yellow text, which means I can become a Grandmaster using the sword with my knight, but I must complete a promotion quest. But for example, if I hover over leather, you can see that the Grandmaster ranking in leather is in red text, which means I can never become a Grandmaster in using leather armor. As opposed to, for example, the Thief, if I just give him leather here, he can become a Grandmaster, but I need to finish a promotion quest. So that is one thing that instantly gives a lot of replay value and a lot of added depth to the game, because you will have classes that, for example, can use a lot of different types of skills but can't really become Grandmasters at them, And on the other hand, you will, for example, have let's say, for example, the sorcerer class, which will be a very powerful spellcaster, but he will suck at using weapons and armor. I can become a master in staff, but staffs are useless. And I think I can only become an expert in leather magic, which is, the lowest, quote-unquote lowest tier armor there is in the game. And right off the bat, it basically makes a huge difference in, which class uses which skill. Above that, we have new skills. Let me just give some examples here. Probably one of the most important skills to have if you are running a hand-to-hand heavy combat, so hand-to-hand combat heavy party, is the Arms Master skill. Now this is the skill that I think would have really been excellent in Might and Magic VI. I'm so happy this skill was introduced in Might and Magic VII, because Might and Magic VI, and I've said that numerous times in my playthrough, it should have been called Magic and Magic VI, because Might is non-existent in late game in Might and Magic VI. However, this skill basically changes the whole thing. This skill affects all hand-to-hand weapons or melee weapons in the game. It doesn't matter if you use daggers, if you use swords, if you use spears, this skill adds to that. It adds to recovery time, it adds to attack bonus on Master, it adds to damage, and Grandmaster doubles all the previous bonuses. So right off the bat, you can see that this is the skill that we will be dumping all our skill points into in the late game. This is one such example. The other one is the Thief's Stealing skill. Now, I never really used stealing. I used stealing in one point in the game, and that is the only point in the game where I actually use it. I'm going to demonstrate it. But the thing with the stealing skill is that you basically can steal things from shops and, like it says, money or items from people, like NPCs that are walking around. But the problem is, if you get caught, you'll be basically banned from the shop forever. And that is really bad in this game. In any game, basically. I mean, you could, for example, have only one shop available to you, but that would be really annoying. So I tend not to use the stealing skill too much. It is an option, though. I guess I could, now that I think about it, I could actually try a playthrough in which I only basically stole items from shops. That would have been kind of interesting. And there are two more skills that I want to show you, but they're on the monk class. And that's dodging and unarmed. They are basically weapon and armor skills. However, the thing with dodging and unarmed is a skill that makes you fight better without any weapons, and dodging makes you basically harder to hit without wearing any armor. So for dodging and unarmed, it's basically all about how much points you put into it, which means it starts off really weak and then gets kind of strong, as you can see. For example, in unarmed, once we reach Master, we have an attack bonus and damage double effect, which is very strong, and in Grandmaster we have a chance of evading an incoming attack equal to skill, which is not that bad. That means we can become a Grandmaster at level 10 of a skill. That means a 10% chance to dodge an attack, so that's good. What else? I think those are pretty much. Oh no, there's one more skill that's new here. I never actually use it though. Is it here? Yeah, it's Identify Monster. So in Might and Magic VI, if you hover over the monster and right click, you only got a life bar. Here you get a lot more information about the monster. Again, I never used this, but it's an interesting thing to to have. You can see the armor class, the hit points. You can see the numerical value of hit points and armor class, I might add. The attack type and damage of monster that could, make it easier, I guess, to, gear up for certain dungeons and everything. Learn which spells the monster can cast. Maybe it can be useful. And learn the monster's resistances. That one could actually be useful, but then again, it's absolutely not necessary. I consider this skill a sort of a flavor text skill, let's say so. Other than that, the game is pretty much the same as Might and Magic VI. It plays the same, the controls are basically the same, albeit it has some differences, you know, between, for example, how magic works. Because now, when you are a normal rank body magic caster, you can only use the first 3 spells or the first 4 spells. What I'm trying to say is you basically have to become an expert to learn better spells, and then a master to learn even better spells, and the grandmaster to learn the best spell, and that spell's cool. You can't, for example, be a level 1 fire magic caster and cast Incinerate anymore. You can't do that. You were able to do that in Might and Magic VI, but you can't do that here. And I think that pretty much concludes my rant. I'm just going to go over the different classes now very quickly. So basically you have the knights, who are I'm going to say the best melee combatants in the game, right next to monks, who are very powerful actually. And late game thieves aren't actually nothing to sneeze about. But anyway, knights, what I suggest is using the sword and spear combination, much the same as in Might and Magic VI, only stronger. And then when you get into the late game, just bump all your stats in Arms Master. Combine that with, you know, plate armor and a heck of a lot of hit points, and you will actually get a murder machine. It's basically knights are murder machines in the late game in this game, much like the sorcerers. What I like about this game is that every single class is viable in the early and the late game. You know, they have some ups and downs, and they have different sort of abilities and styles and options, but there's not really a class that falls off. You know, there are classes that are better in some situations and not as good as other situations, but in general, all the classes are really awesome. Anyway, the knight can become a grandmaster in sword, in spear, in arms master, and in plate armor, which makes them incredibly strong in hand-to-hand combat. I wouldn't exactly use, for example, shields, because while you can grandmaster them, I just think it's a waste, because you're trading off a lot of damage for just having a shield, basically. And of course, you need the bow skill, even though you can only become an expert, and even that's not necessary. You can just, you know, have it on normal if you want. But anyway, let's go to the next class. It's the cleric. The cleric is pretty much the same as in Might and Magic VI as well. You have maces, you can't grandmaster them. You can grandmaster the body, spirit, and mind spells, as you can see. And later on, you can also become a grandmaster in either light magic or dark magic. That is important. Either dark magic or light magic. Now, what do you mean, Chrysantheme, when you say either dark magic or light magic? Well, you will see in the future, dear viewer. One thing to note, clerics can become grandmasters in merchant, which basically allows you to buy and sell items at the value they have, which is incredibly useful. It's an even more powerful skill than it was in Might and Magic VI. And it's basically a must, to be honest. Then you have, like, you know, things like meditation. Oh yeah, the alchemy skill. I completely forgot to explain that one. Alchemy in Might and Magic VII is much more useful than Might and Magic VI. However, it comes with a caveat. Alchemy can only, you can only mix potions if you have the alchemy skill. You can still mix, you can still make red, blue, and yellow potions, but without having the basic alchemy skill, you won't be able to make, for example, the purple potions, which cure poison, and the orange potions, which cure disease in this game, I think, which is even better. Etc., etc. And then when you go to, you know, expert and then master and grandmaster, you will unlock more options of brewing potions, and on grandmaster you are able to brew black potions. Now, the reason why the potions are much better in this game, in my opinion, is one, they have a much higher value to them. I think black potions have a value of 2,000 compared to 150 in Might and Magic VI. Which means you can actually use them for as a sort of income. For example, you know, you buy all the herbs in the potion bottles when you have a Grandmaster Alchemist, and you basically brew a potion and then sell it back for like 2000% bonus income, basically. And the effects of the potions are much better. In Might and Magic VI, you had like, I don't know, heals 150 hit points, but gives you +1 year of age, which is irrelevant, but whatever. That was, for example, that was a black potion. Whereas in Alchemy and Might and Magic VII, your alchemy skill or your ranking and level of alchemy skill directly influences how strong your potions are, because you also have different ingredients, or should I say different ingredients of the same color. You have multiple red ingredients, multiple blue ingredients, and multiple yellow ingredients. You also have gray ingredients, but whatever. I'm not going to go into that. And the thing is that each ingredient has a different power level. And power level basically means the added effect of the potion. An example would be having a red potion that's made from a Widowweep's berry. It has a power of either 1 or 5, I can't remember now. And it's basically, the effect of the red potion is heals 10 hit points. It's like, okay, that's 10 hit points, then the power is, and you're like, okay, so 10 hit points, wow, big deal. But you also have to include the power of the ingredient into the potion. And the power of, for example, the berries is 5, which means 5 gets added to that hit points healed. And you get a potion that heals for 15. And that is, for example, an example of a potion brewed by somebody that doesn't have the alchemy skill. When you have the alchemy skill, even the skill of your alchemist is included into the power. So basically you can have a red potion that heals for, let's say for an example, of 80 hit points easily. And that is basically a basic potion. And that's why alchemy is in this game is actually useful if you want to play it that way. If you go that route, take the druid, because druids can become grandmasters in alchemy, and black potions are awesome in this game. Anyway, we pretty much finished with the cleric. So with the cleric, I would advise you go for mace and shield, because they can also become masters in shield, and then chainmail, because you want them tanky, and then of course body spirit, mind magic, and slap merchant onto them, and you basically have a very, very good cleric. Next is the archer, the only class that can become a grandmaster at using the bow, which adds to their attack damage, and that is awesome. That is incredibly awesome. Problem with archers are they aren't terribly strong in hand-to-hand combat. I think they can use spears and shields, which sort of mitigates something, it sort of mitigates a lot of their, how should I say this, weaknesses in hand-to-hand combat. Because all their other skills and weapons, they can't really, be too good at using them. So spear is the best option, and then I think you can use a shield. Even their arms master can only reach expert. So archers are basically specialists in ranged combat that deals physical damage. So you'll be relying on bows if you have your archer, and as soon as you go into hand-to-hand combat range, the archer will basically drop off in usefulness. You will have access to some, air magic, fire magic, and all of that, so that's nice, I guess. Anyway, next up is the paladin. We had that in Might and Magic VI, and it's still a cross between the knight and the cleric. So it's basically a tankier, more hand-to-hand combat oriented version of the cleric. You can achieve master and spirit, body, mind magics, and it does pretty much the same things without actually being able to merchant. So basically use maces with them and shields, and I think they can grandmaster the chain mail armor, I think. And they can also have Grandmaster of Repair, much the same as Knights. I forgot to mention this. Take repair item on your Knight. So next up we have the Druids, which we already talked about some. Well, we already talked about some of their pluses. They're not actually very good in hand-to-hand combat, so yeah, just stick them with daggers. They're much better than staffs that the sorcerer starts with, and you basically have the master level of all the elemental and self magic skills achievable. You can't start with light and dark magic though. I mean, you can't learn them, so you can't use them. And if you're taking the druid, take alchemy. 100% for sure, take alchemy, because it's going to be useful. So next we have the monk. That is a new class. The monk, basically, it's a sort of alternative to a knight. He uses the dodging and unarmed. And the thing with the monks is they start off, like in the base stats, hit points and, you know, recovery time and everything, because they don't use weapons, they actually start off very strong and they aren't reliant on the gear you will find. There is a certain thing with monks that I dislike though, and that is the fact that they basically ramp up fairly slowly, in my opinion. I don't usually take them. However, if you have, for example, a hand-to-hand combat oriented party, the monk will have to be there, because they're very, very powerful in hand-to-hand combat. And that's pretty much it, you know, like you have dodging and unarmed. You should put staff on them, because they're able to grandmaster it, and with grandmaster staff you can use the staff with the unarmed skill. However, here I do have something to note. I think that the interaction with the staff and the unarmed skill, or either the staff, unarmed, and arms master skill with the monks, is a bit bugged. Because I think one cancels out the other or something. I'm not entirely sure how it works, because I never used monks myself. So on paper, I guess it looks good, right? You know, you can use the staff with your unarmed skill, and your unarmed skill basically is incredibly powerful. Maybe, I think how it works is that if you take no, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, I guess I'll need to try it out myself for once. Like, I actually don't know this. I haven't taken, or I did play, you know, games with monks in them. I never finished them though. They can become bodybuilding grandmasters. Bodybuilding in this game is incredibly powerful, even more powerful than in Might and Magic VI. Like, as we saw, I was pleasantly surprised in Might and Magic VI at how large an increase I actually got. Well, in Might and Magic VII, it's an even larger increase. And one thing with monks, if you put the leather armor skill on them, dodging also enables you to wear leather armor while still getting the benefits from the dodging skill, so that's good as well. So as you can see, monks are basically hand-to-hand specialists. They're kind of cool, actually. Sorry about that. So next up, rangers. Now in their description, they're the sort of jack of all trades, you know. They can learn an incredibly broad variety and amount of skills. However, there are very few skills that they can actually become Grandmaster with. I think the only two are actually Axe and the Identify Monster skill. I'm not sure about all the others. They can become masters at using the bow, which, you know, makes up for some of their shortcomings. But in my opinion, this is unfortunately the weakest class in the game, which makes them far from useless. I have to stress that. But you know, they can really go in depth with anything. They don't excel at anything. Like, the best thing they have is the Axe Grandmaster skill, and axes are very powerful in hand-to-hand combat. However, they don't have, you know, access to a good arms master rating. They don't have access to, I don't know, let's say shields or even a good armor, I think. So, yeah, they're a bit iffy. But you know, if you have to take, for example, just let's say you want to have a class that can do a lot of different things, but not all of them optimally or incredibly good, Rangers are the ones for you. So yeah, that's with Rangers. Sorcerers, they're pretty easy to explain. Sorcerers are basically Grandmasters at Elemental Magics, at Light or Dark Magic. And that's pretty much it. That is literally it with sorcerer. They are shit at everything else you put on them, except maybe for the identify monster and the identify item spells. Identify item skills that they can grandmaster. However, the identify item skill is obsolete in this game for the same reason it's obsolete in Might and Magic VI, because you can get a hireling to do that for you. Oh yeah, I forgot. With the ranger, I would probably give them the bow, or I would definitely give them the bow, and then it sort of depends on the rest of your party. For example, they can become a person that can disarm your traps. They can become a person that, I guess, takes some damage. Wow, I'm actually at a loss for words, because I would probably start out with bow, leather, and then accent perception. I think that would be a good start for a ranger. And then you sort of build them, you know, from there, depending on what your party actually needs. Anyway, back to sorcerer. With sorcerer, definitely start them with leather, and then start them with whatever you want left over. Now, one thing I will stress is that staffs are absolutely useless, in my opinion. They are weak in terms of weapons. Their skill, I mean, the gain you get from leveling it up is pretty much negligible or non-existent. I mean, sorcerers can become masters of the staff, which give you a chance to stun equal to skill. Now that sounds good, but in reality, you're gonna be using spells anyway, so whatever. And one of my suggestions would be either take air, water, or earth magic in the beginning. You can take identify item if you want, however that is absolutely not necessary, because you have a wonderful hireling that does that for you. So either take leather and air, water, or earth magic, or take leather and take the dagger skill. Because daggers, while being weaker when compared to a staff of the same ranking, they're much faster. And on expert, you will be able to use 2 daggers, which will pump up your DPS with a sorcerer. Well, it's basically incomparable to a staff sorcerer. So your sorcerer will also be able to defend themselves in hand-to-hand combat. That would be my suggestion, because dagger is one of those few skills that is actually useful on just expert, purely because the daggers are so fast and you can use 2 of them. And then together with buffs, you know, you get an even faster recovery time, and you get damage buffs, which are sort of like increased in, oops, as I smack my microphone, they get increased in their usefulness because the daggers can swing so fast. And there we go. Then the next and last one is the thief. They can become grandmasters at dagger, which, like I said with sorcerer, daggers, fairly weak. However, at grandmaster level, the skill gets added to attack damage. And on master, you have a chance to cause triple damage equal to skill. And because you will be leveling up your dagger, that means you have a 10% chance of doing triple damage. You're wielding 2 daggers, you're hitting incredibly fast, and on grandmaster you get some more attack damage added to your attacks, and daggers actually become very powerful in this game. They can also become grandmasters in leather, so yes, take that, and they can become grandmasters at disarming traps, so yes, take that. Now, thieves are actually pretty cut and dry. In the later stages, they can also start using the elemental spells up to, I think expert. I'm not entirely sure. However, you start without spell points, and you first need to achieve your first promotion to even start using basic magic. And that was pretty much my introduction to all the new classes and the races. Now, here we go. I'm going to create my party now. Or, you know what? I can give you some more examples. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my race to be all human. And the reason for that is, in Might and Magic VII, there is a sort of... I don't know how to say that. Well, races basically don't like each other. I guess Might and Magic VII is rife with racism, maybe. but how it shows is that whenever you're fighting, and I'm going to give you a concrete example. When you're fighting goblins, which unfortunately is going to be the quote-unquote first true map of the game, they will first focus any dwarf party members you have in your game. So if you actually wanted to start with the original race party setup, that would have meant that your dwarven cleric would have been the first one to die, because they would have selectively hit him before going on to everybody else. And in my opinion, that makes it very annoying. It doesn't make the game much harder, except for some stages. It just makes it annoying. So I like having my party all humans, because they, admittedly, they don't have the optimal stat allocation, but they have a nice balanced one, which means they can pretty much become anything. And in the late game, it doesn't matter whether you started off as a goblin, if you started off as a dwarf or an elf or a human, because a 200 might human is basically the same as a 200 might goblin. It doesn't have any difference. So the reason why I like having all 4 of the same race and those being human is because they start with a sort of balanced stat allocation in the beginning, and, well, I avoid the racial conflicts in this game. So, next thing, oh yeah, I'm probably going to be going with Knight, Thief, Cleric, and Sorcerer. I think this is probably the easiest way to complete this game, because you have all the choices, you have some very strong skills in the Cleric, Sorcerer, Knight and Thief. You have a lot of options for range combat, for hand-to-hand combat, and this is just a nice party to start out the game with. Not least because you can master Repair Item with Knight, you can Grandmaster Disarm Trap with Thief, you can Grandmaster Merchant with Cleric, and you can Grandmaster Identify Item with Sorcerer, if that's what you want. And I think the miscellaneous skills are very important to make the game easier. Add to that, you have the Knight that has the Armsmaster skill, the Thief that is also a very capable hand-to-hand combatant, the Cleric's not bad either, the Sorcerer can get buffed and basically throws out spells like a madman, the Cleric can buff and heal and everything. That is, I think, the best all-around party you can use in the game. I'm going to give you some other examples of parties that I think are good, maybe just 2 or 3. So this is like an all-around party. So if you want, for example, a physical damage heavy party with little magic capabilities, you can go for example, Knight and Monk and let's say Thief and Archer. So you'll have basically a lot of hand-to-hand combat damage. If you take Ranger instead of Archer, you will actually have even more. However, you'll be trading your range capabilities for hand-to-hand capabilities, and because you don't have a Cleric, you won't have the strongest buffs available. You can, for example, go with a party that has 3 hand-to-hand combat heavy, so 3 heavy hand-to-hand combat character classes, and then stick a druid to them, and that will make it so that you have access to the master, elemental, and self skills, etc., etc. Also a good, still might heavy party. Now on the other side of the spectrum, if you want magic, this is a party setup that you absolutely cannot beat. Sure, you can you could switch out the Cleric for example, a Druid, but if you want a magic heavy party, the Cleric, Sorcerer is the best thing you can get. That is an amazing amount of damage. It's very fun to play, actually. It gets a bit samey, and you definitely don't have the width that, you know, you would get with a lot of different character classes, but this is sort of like the prototype magic heavy build. This is the heaviest you can get with magic. I guess you could switch out the Cleric for another Sorcerer, but then you'll be wasting pretty much a lot of potential, if you ask me. But you know, the beauty of Might and Magic VII is you can basically have any party you want in the game, and it will be great. It'll be fun to play, it will be viable, you'll be able to finish the game. So, you know, I finished this game with a lot of different parties. For example, I finished with a party like this, with 4 archers. It was fun. I had bow grandmaster and pretty much everything died without me spending any spell points in the game. So yeah, experiment, have fun. But for us, we'll be going with this setup, the starting setup, because it's wonderful. It has everything we need. It has everything we need to make the game, let's say, non-gimmicky and as diverse as possible. So first things first, I'm gonna put the stats I need onto max, and I liked having my damage, so I'm gonna prioritize so intellect for spell points with sorcerer, personality for spell points with cleric, and then might with my thief, and might with my knight and thief. I'm not gonna explain what each and every single stat does, because I already did that in Might and Magic VI, so if anybody doesn't know what different stats do, you can go ahead and check out my Might and Magic VI video, the starting out video and the basics, because it's basically the same. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment in the comment section. So next up we have the skills. So our knight is going to start with the bow skill, because we are going to need the bow skill anyway. And I'm going to start him with Arms Master, because that even a level 1 Arms Master will add to the recovery time of my sword skill, so that's good. With my thief, I'm gonna go for Disarm, Trap, and Leather, of course, because you can Grandmaster both of them. I guess I could start with bow as well, but we're gonna be getting the bow skill first things first anyway. I'm gonna start with Spirit and Merchant with you. Actually, no, I'm gonna start with Spirit and Shield with you. That's gonna be even better. We're gonna grab Merchant, and it's a bit cheaper than Shield, I think. And we're gonna start with Air, and should I start with Leather or Dagger? Leather, definitely Leather. Yeah. So this is gonna be our starting party, guys. As you can see, I also renamed them to the same names that Might and Magic VI does, because, well, I'm kind of used to these names, to be honest. I always rename them the same way. It doesn't matter what races I play. They're always Zoltan, Roderick, Serena, and Alexis. So yeah, guys, this is going to be our party setup. We are going to play through Might and Magic VII with this exact party setup. So I hope to meet you here next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like and subscribe if you did. Leave me a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you here next time when we actually start tackling the game. Guys, I've been Chrysantheme, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye bye!